Hi, welcome to another exciting episode of Be Positive on etbrandicry.com. I'm your host, Ambi Parameswaran here, and I'm really excited to welcome our guest all the way from Paris, or Gay Paris, as they say, Raka Sinha, who is International Brand Marketing Director at the world's most glamorous company, L'Oreal. So, Raka, welcome to our show.
Thanks, Ambi.
Raka, is, as I said, and I wrote to you that the show is uh, about how marketing achievers like you have managed to navigate their careers, face setbacks, face challenges, and got on top of it to become successful icons the way you have become. So that's the theme of the show. So before we get to talk about your career, and I know you'll have a lot of things to say about your career, and we'll come to that. Can you just tell the viewers about your early childhood, your schooling, your college? Where did it all start? Are you a Bandra girl or a Santa Cruz girl, or are you from somewhere else? Yeah.
Sure. So I'm actually, all my childhood until adulthood, I was actually a South Bombay girl. So I was born and raised in one home at Nepean Sea Road. So yes, I lived in one home pretty much all my childhood till adulthood. But I was such a misfit there. So coming back to the insult, because I was surrounded by what you expect of the families living in Nepean Sea Road, which are really some of the wealthiest business families and industrialists. We lived there simply because my parents were in the government and they had a flat given to them by the government there. Of course, they also had a very interesting background, both my parents, because they had both chucked up their lives, really middle class lives, and done things dramatically different. My mother had taken off to Delhi from a town in Gujarat to study drama at National School of Drama. My dad had gone off with money collected with the help of his older brother to London and got himself studied and worked at the BBC. And then they both came back and they met in Doordarshan when they were 40. They were single, working, and they got married and had me. So they were quite ahead of their time in many ways,
Very
living in
interesting. Very
very
interesting. Very,
interesting.
very,
Yeah.
very interesting. Yeah, yeah. And your dad worked for Doordarshan, is it?
He started off working for Doordarshan, and then much later on in my life, he set up sort of his own independent production company. Uh, but so again, I think my childhood, they were of course very big influences, being very strong characters, both of them. But again, talking of Nepean Sea Road, we were a very sort of a modest salaried family. My friends at school, I was at Villa Teresa, were really sort of some of the richest families there are in the country. And I know even sort of my day-to-day life, my vacations used to be traveling with mum to the villages of Gujarat if she was doing a tourism documentary for Doordarshan. And I would come back and say, I went to Gundal and Saputara in Gujarat. And I would have my friends saying, we went to New Zealand and Switzerland for vacation. So this was the kind of paradox I grew up in.
It's very interesting, right? I mean, the chances are your Nepean Sea Road friends went on holiday to New Zealand and whatever,
Yes.
and probably chances are they're still living in Nepean Sea Road, whereas you who went to Gondola, wherever you did, now living in Paris. So it's pretty difficult to get my head around that, but that's interesting.
It is interesting. And I think, I mean, again, whether Paris, whether Nepean Sea Road, I think the one thing, because when you're 10, 11 and you're living like this, you do ask your parents that, why are we poor? And I know that, mom and dad would often engage in this discussion with me, and dad would say that, Raka, we do jobs that we love doing and we're doing it honestly, and therefore we sleep well at night. You will see it doesn't matter how much you earn. It's about loving what you do, doing it honestly. And I think, so whether Paris, whether Nepean Sea Road, I think that's something that I've, tried to keep with me in the decisions I've taken. So, yes.
So from Villa Teresa, you did undergrad at Sophia, or was it?
No, again, I went to HR again so there's a story there because I surprised myself with how well I did in the 10th standard. I was an average student, but I had an 86%, which was very good in the 90s in the ICSE board. And there was one set of, family and friends saying, but of course you will do science with such a good result. And I had my parents saying that, no, but, you will do arts, there is culture and history and literature, and, you should do arts. And I said, actually, I will do commerce because, and I'm so ashamed of the reason, but my reason was that all my friends were going to HR. So I was going to go to HR college at Churchgate with them. And I think, from the first 2 years, which went a bit
It's
sort of,
interesting. I think it's very interesting that, most parents put pressure on their children to do science or
yes,
engineering or
yes,
medicine, and your parents said, no, no, no,
absolutely.
we want you to do arts, you want to do literature, you want to do history. But then, the moral of the story is whatever you tell the kids will not listen to you, right?
But they've always said that, they've always said that we are here to guide you, and then it's your decision to take and yours to bear the consequences of whatever decisions you take. It's your life to live. So I think, that was clear. And then again, so I think the first 2 years were a bit time whiled away. And then again, life throws these chances at you, and suddenly out of the blue, in the first year of my HR senior college, as we used to call it, first year BCom, we had Professor Indu Shahani, who is still doing a lot in the academic world. So she was the vice principal of HR, and she introduced this advertising course. It was a 3-year course with faculty from the industry coming and teaching like 16, 17-year-olds. And we had summer trainings to do. And this was really, I mean, it was such a chance, and it kind of opened up a whole new world for me. So I worked hard to get into the 30 seats that were reserved for this, and I made it in. And I think that's where, it kind of set the way for to me to say that this is what I want to do. I think it was my first training at Percept Advertising, which was my first exposure to the world of advertising, and I loved it.
It's interesting that Indu again is a friend, and so is her husband Ranjit, and I think
Yes.
Indu tried a lot of innovative things in HR, and I think it's great to know that you still remember what she did and
Oh, yes.
how it opened a fresh idea to you. So you, after you did your undergrad, did you work before doing your MBA, or did you go straight to NM?
So I went straight to NM because I think, again, there were, when I finished this 3-year course, I know that there were some agencies who are looking to, come to HR for placements, etc. But again, here I had, parents who said that, look, a pure undergrad degree doesn't hold much. You must do a post graduation, whatever it is you want to do. And I think so they kind of nudged me into, getting in, and I sort of got into NMIMS. So, and that's where I spent my 2 years at NMIMS.
So how was the NMIMS? How was NMIMS? Was it? I think you did the STACA course, right?
That's
The
right.
the
Yes.
integrated marketing communication course. Yeah. So
Again, because I think I was, so focused on advertising. It was such a passion. I loved it so much. So I said, this is what I want to do. It was great, Ambi. And I think, of course, what you studied in the classroom was great. I did my first summer training at FCB Ulka, which was again fantastic. I think NM was a very different experience for me in that, coming back to the fact that I had lived all my life in a very closed environment at Nepean Sea Road. School was at Pedder Road, college was at Churchgate, and this was really my friend circle. And suddenly with NMIMS, it opened up a world, to me of the kind of backgrounds people come from, and with far less privileges, but the sense of drive and the resilience that I saw in my classmates kind of also left me saying, my God, that with it's this real can-do attitude, coming into a new city, struggling to find accommodation in Bombay, and then you saw these people who inspired me in a very different way. So I think it expanded my friend circle and my circle of influence dramatically, and of course what we learned in the classroom and at FCB Ulka, which was again a fantastic summer training.
to our viewers who may not be aware, NMIMS was a pioneering business school which actually started a 2-year integrated marketing communication course well before, I think, even before MICA was set up. And I think Raka was one of the stellar students from there. And I had the privilege of teaching the class which she was in. And if I remember right, she used to be a front bench girl, very bright. And I really enjoyed teaching. I think I don't know what I taught you. Was it consumer behavior? Or was it
brand strategy and sort of everything around that? So yes,
okay. So it
did
was
brand
brand,
strategy,
yeah,
brand
it was
marketing.
brand strategy. And an interesting sidebar to this is I got all of you to work on a real life project. So you'd actually probably made up your mind at a very young age of 17 or 18 or 19 that you want to be in advertising. And then you joined FCB Ulka as one of their Star 1 trainees, right?
Yeah.
And You spent what, 2 years, 3 years? Which brand did you work on? Did you work on L'Oreal at that time, or?
So yes, in fact, sort of sheer coincidence, I worked on also on Nerolac paints, and I worked on ITC Foods, so Sundrop cooking oil, which was again fantastic. And I worked on L'Oreal. So in fact, Synergy, as it was called then, and then Garnier is what it's called now. So yes, it was these three brands, and I think I have to say that what was very interesting in those 3 years was that I spent 3 years there on these accounts. Is that we were never really advertising solution providers in Ulka. We were really, almost marketing partners. I mean, I remember on L'Oreal having discussions like, look, nobody knows Garnier. The pricing is 4 times more than any of the Hindustan Lever, Lakme Ponds. You cannot do fairness creams. This will not, we will not survive. We need to do things that the consumer has never seen and Unilever does not want to do or cannot do. Eye contour gels, wrinkle control creams. So we were actually defining, portfolio choices, that, okay, it's not going to be advertising, it's going to be more educating the Indian consumer, uplifting the dialogue. So it was very much about, hand in hand with the clients on all the big marketing decisions, and then advertising being one of them. I remember Sundrop also, it was about, what kind of extensions can we do to match price of the competitors. So it was, I think, I was very excited about advertising, but what I ended up doing was a much more holistic, role, which then made me say that, okay, this is what I want to do, something far more holistic. And yes.
I think at that time, L'Oreal India had a pretty visionary CEO.
There was Jeff Skinsley at the time.
Yeah.
Yes, he was fantastic. Yes.
Jeff Skinsley was such a fabulous leader. He turned around the India business, which was struggling for so many years. And then, I don't know, I think he went to UK or somewhere. Yeah.
So after that, he was also towards the end working on sort of the, a region, sort of he was heading a zone for us just till he retired a few years ago. So I met him when I joined L'Oreal 9 years ago. I had met him again here and sort of said hello to him and reminded him that I was the little trainee taking notes when he was here in India.
So you spent 3 years in advertising, and then the marketing bug bit you, right? And most youngsters who join advertising, many of them have this, at least in the client servicing and account planning, they have this desire that, one day I want to go on to the other side, of the thing. So you moved from FCB Ulka to Marico. How did that move happen?
So in fact, I didn't move directly to Marico. I spent a little less than a year at Citibank. And in fact, yes, I think, I wanted to move to the marketing side, but I think like there are biases everywhere in the world, there was clearly a bias. And I was told very clearly by placement consultants or by potential recruiters that, FMCG marketing, because I wanted to do FMCG marketing. And I was told, but, you've not done this rough and tough sales. You're a South Bombay advertising girl, and I was told this directly, indirectly, that, you've not done the rough and tough sales. So we don't see this happening. And there was, I don't know if you remember at that time, there was Megha Chandan, who was in FCB Ulka, who's also a dear friend to date. But I remember complaining to her and she said, hey, you know what? My husband works in Citibank in sales. It's tough. Do you want to, they're always looking for new people. Do you want to give that a try? And I remember saying, but, here is a girl who loved advertising, who wants to do brand management. And, I don't know anything about banking. But, I went, I met them. I had a job and I said, okay, if this is what it's going to take. I did a year at Citibank in sales. It was tough, but I think it, I learned a lot like you do in every job. It was a fantastic experience. I think also Ulka was such a nurturing, family-like environment that this helped me land into what corporate life is about. So that's the role Citibank played. And then I think from there, the role in Marico happened. And I think it was the fact that FCB Ulka had taught me all that I needed to know from a functional, skills point of view. And then the fact that I had done sales somewhere probably helped make the move to Marico eventually.
So Raka, so you moved, interesting career transition from, and not too many people manage it, right? So from advertising, client servicing, going into financial services, probably selling cards, door-to-door kind of stuff, and then you jump to Marico. So what brand did you work on, Marico? And you spent a few years there. So any interesting stories from your Marico days?
Yes, plenty of interesting stories. So I think Marico, I started as a consumer and market insights manager. So I had met Shogata Gupta, and he said that this is what we have a vacancy for, and it also ties in with your advertising experience. So I said, okay, great, but I want to do brand management ultimately. And he said, sure, you start with this because here is where I have a vacancy, and you prove yourself and you would get it. And it's really the way Marico works. I mean, it's a fantastic place in that, you prove yourself, you're given all the freedom, you're an entrepreneur, you can do what you like, you can expand your role once you keep sort of, delivering. So
Which
I said,
year did
okay,
you?
and I got it. 2004.
Okay.
2004, and I was there till 2006 end, 2006. So yes,
Okay.
so 2.5 years or so. So I started in CMI, and then 5-6 months later, it was going really well. But I said I still want to do brand management, and I know that they said, okay, so you continue doing what you're doing because it's adding a lot of value. But here is this project, take it and launch it. And then I investigated, and I found that this was a product that had been there for the last 5 years. Waiting to be launched. Nobody had ever launched it. And I said, you guys are joking. I mean, this is a joke because you're never going to launch this. And I remember them saying that, but well, we've not launched it because we've never been convinced on the potential, but that's also the part of a brand manager's job. So take it, and tell us if you can convince us. And if you can, then it's your brand to manage. And this was at that time, this product, which was for bald men, and really with no one convinced. And I remember taking it on and saying, desperately wanting to make it work. And finally, I think by sort of reworking the concept, what was born finally was what you may remember called parachute therapy, which was a hair fall solution. It was really Parachute's entry into the very medicated cosmeceutical space with a big push in pharmacies, very premium, very expert. And I remember, I mean, again, it was not, it's never just one person. I remember working very closely with Ambience, who was our agency at that time, giving them sleepless nights saying, guys, we have to crack this because I so desperately wanted to, get this right. So with them, and of course, I think at Marico, again, I had a boss, Chandru, who was great. But equally, there were, some people there who were really there to support me, knowing that, this girl wants to sort of, make it. So whether it is Samir Satpathy, who is now with ITC, Rajiv Mathrani, who's also sort of, in and out of the corporate world, Amit Nandi, I think they were all there to really support me and, guide me because I had never done a brand management role before. There was also Nyanada Chaudhary, who you remember from FCB, who was heading media for Marico. So I remember there was a time when I said, okay, here is a concept, here is the business case, and we could make it work as a very cosmeceutical women's hair loss product. We said, okay, great. Then they said, okay, here is some money, you do a test market in the southern state. And I remember with Nyanada saying, but and Nyanada said, Raka, this money is not going to get us anything in a state in the south. And again, I think she also had the same belief that I had transferred to her. And she said, you know what, let's do a test market in Bombay. Something we had never done, but we said we'll get all the outdoor spaces, let everyone know, and let's see if we can convince people internally because we believe in this. We are all based here. Let's see what we can do. And I remember we went on the streets trying to identify bus hoardings where we thought this would be very visible, maximum crowds, bus stopping, all of that. And we did an outdoor plan, and it was a fantastic success. In fact, I remember when one of the bosses did a visit to a pharmacy, and the pharmacist said that, since you've put this bus hoarding outside my shop, there's an earthquake in my shop and you're not able to give me stocks to supply. So we were out of stock in a few weeks. And I think that's where, parachute therapy became this big national sort of, entry of Marico into the more premium segment. And yes, that was my wonderful 2.5 years in Marico, which were fantastic in terms of learning and just the thrill of, being given this freedom to do what you believe in.
I think Harsh Mariwala has recently written a book called Harsh Realities, which is a fabulous book about the culture which was built in Marico, the one which you talk about. I mean, I can't imagine any other company letting you launch an FMCG product by taking outdoor in Bombay. That's like complete anathema, right? I mean, you're all completely programmed into doing TV and, 80, 90 GRPs per week and blah, 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 blah. And, and here is a company, the team which says, we want to do outdoor in Bombay. You must be having a hole in your head. So you are actually courting with disaster, Raka, there, right?
I mean, I think coming back to Harsh, when I'm in Bombay in October, I would love to get my hands on that book. But I think he's really, I was so fortunate to have been there when he was more involved than he is now, because I think he's one of those people who is a great visionary, a very successful businessman, but equally, Ambi, a wonderful human being. I mean, we used to do monthly updates to him. The respect, the humble sort of way in which he would even tell you what he thinks should be done, but said that but you're the marketeers, you do, but this is how so I mean, he taught me that you can be a great human being and yet a very successful businessman. They don't necessarily have to be either or. So he's fantastic, and I would love to get my hands on the book when I'm there in October.
You should. Look, I'm sure he will more than willingly meet you and give you an autograph and probably give you a cup of tea,
Yes.
because he's very proud of all the Marico. In fact, the book contains a lot of ex-Marico people talking, in glowing terms about Marico, including people like Samir Satpathy and Rajesh Jejurikar and people like that. So how did the Unilever call happen? It came as a headhunter, and what did you get to handle in Unilever?
So yes, it came as a headhunter, but it was again on the back of parachute therapy, which she told me later. She said they had actually asked me to call and say that can we see who's launched it and can we meet the person? So that's how it happened. This I got to know after my interview there, and then I had a role at in Hindustan Lever on Knorr Foods. So Knorr or Knorr, the way you pronounce it. So soups, meal makers, snacks. So I did that for 3 years in Hindustan Lever, where again, I mean, it was great in terms of, we were creating a category that didn't exist. So there was a whole set of learnings there. But equally, I think at Unilever, I mean, the beauty of that company, wherever you are, whether in India, whether in London, is that, there is such a focus on trainings, upskilling. I mean, we have an academy where you're literally attending a class for 3 weeks, in the year, where you're learning right from sort of consumer need, concepts, insights, how to write them, how to frame them. So, I mean, it's really you're going back to university and getting paid for it in some ways, with plenty of live case studies and examples from your big array of brands. So it was again a great learning experience, and also opened out my world too, because even if you're in Hindustan Lever, you're working in such an international team based in India, always sort of working with sort of really people from virtually every country. So that was 3 years there, and then 3 years in London with Unilever.
How did the London call happen? Uh, was it an automatic rotation they did, and did you get to work on Dove or Axe or one of those brands in London?
So I worked on Dove. So it happened. I mean, I think it was the first time that I felt like I was ready to explore something outside of Bombay, which I had been so wedded to till then. So I said, okay. And then, yes, when you're in Hindustan Lever, you are considered among the sort of, talent sort of export, center to pretty much many of the sort of countries around. So there was a role on Dove in the global brand team. And it's a brand that, I mean, I think most marketeers would love to work on. So I ended up there, and I worked on Dove for 3 years in a global brand development role.
Most youngsters, like you said, very, very, very rightly, that they all dream of working on a brand like Dove or Nike or one of those iconic brands. How was it working on a brand like that? Because from outside it looks very romantic, but I'm sure inside there are a lot of rules and regulations and grids and guidelines. And I remember talking to, I think it was Rajaram, who said that to convince Unilever to allow him to put up hoardings for Dove shampoo about hair fall, saying ordinary shampoo and the comb which has 20 pieces of hair, and then Dove and this comb, so in fact, he said it was damn tough to get them to agree to do a problem solution communication for Dove. But I think, thank God, I proved it to them that it'll work. And then, thank God it worked. And that, of course, built his career, right? But, there are all these, so the outside is very romantic, Dove, go, it's all beautiful, nice, and all that. And then And then you go there and you say, no, you can't turn left, you can't turn right, you can't change the background, it has to be white. The model cannot be dressed in anything except white, and her hair should be pulled back, or whatever. How was it working on a brand like that?
So exactly what you said, Ambi, so true, and I went with rose tinted glasses saying that this is a dream, my career's made. And you're right that I, in fact, landed just when the Real Beauty campaign had landed with the earlier team. So it was, this really big legacy campaign that we were inheriting. And this came with sort of a real challenge and a real responsibility that, you have this campaign, which is not just very successful, but also is taking a stand that you don't want to move away from. There was a real sense of purpose built in, and we wanted to continue it. But equally, you cannot be arrogant to say that, this campaign is doing well. And it had started, if you remember at that time, on soaps and cleansing and the body business, skin business, where you moved away from these artificially perfect skinny models, and you showed the beauty in real bodies, real skin. And in Western Europe, in the US, this had really been this had been a huge success. But then, like I said, you cannot be arrogant to say, okay, so this will now transcend all countries, all categories of Dove, because remember, Dove also exists in deodorants and in hair care. So you cannot say that, okay, this is so good that now every country and every category will have to accept it, because the reality is that for some consumers, I mean, on hair, for example, I remember Japanese women, because I was working on hair at the time, where women in Japan would say, but, I mean, my real hair, if I leave it the way it is, it's not even hygienic. Because when I wake up, there's a basic that I need to do, whether it is chemicals, whether it is, products, to even look neat. So don't talk to me about my real hair. Brazil, similarly, there were women who were sort of moving away from what they believed was their virgin hair, real hair, because that's, for them, that wasn't beauty. So on hair, it was very different. And therefore, I think there was this very interesting challenge that you still have to stay true to the brand. You cannot become a schizophrenic brand and say, okay, on hair, I will do what Pantene is doing. It's not that. And again, the brand was doing, was in such a right direction, and we all really wanted to keep it. But equally, it's about adapting to categories and to consumers while still keeping the core of the brand intact. So it was always this kind of, balance between what is the brand, how do we elevate it to make it more aspirational on a category like hair, but while still being true to the brand, true to the core, and also yet being relevant to consumers all around the world, because it existed in, the brand exists, well, that time was in 60 countries. So yes.
You spoke about, going from South Bombay to the suburbs to study, and then you probably were in Bandra, because I think Marico was in Bandra, and then you moved to Unilever, which was probably in Andheri, right? And then you got airdropped into London. How was the culture? We've had several guests here who've talked about the transition. It all looks very easy, but there are many, many transition issues, cultural issues. What do you think is, it doesn't even strike you that this could be a cultural issue? And so, is there anything of course, Unilever is a very, very, very multicultural, multidimensional kind of a corporation, but living in London, how was it? How was it for you? Was it easy, tough? Any interesting learnings from there?
I think so. In that sense, London was not such a big shock, because again, London is one of those cities, and which is where it's very different from Paris, where you can get whatever country you want, you can get in London. So if you, in Unilever itself, you had pretty much every nationality there was. So if you wanted to have an Indian lunch one day with only speaking Hindi, you could have it, So in that sense, I have to say London wasn't as much of a shock to me. I think what I really did was that, and I still do, with two little kids and jobs that are quite sort of long and demanding, I do have a lot of, my mom is here most of the time. My dad, when he was around, used to be traveling 3-4 months till the very end. He used to be up and down. We have a lot of other family that comes, visits for extended periods like Indian families do. And I think what's interesting is that, to me, it's not a shock, but I think people around me, whether it was in London, whether it's in Paris, are always shocked at how, so again, you have your cousin this time. I say, yes. Say, but, or your mother, oh, she's still here. I say, yeah. But it's been 3 months. I said, yes. So when is she going back? I said, I don't know. We don't even have a return ticket yet. So for me, I use a lot of my friends and family to sort of be around when I'm working long hours. That way the kids have, really someone from family with them. They also stay connected to India. But I know that's been the big shock for all my colleagues and friends here and in London that, your family comes and then they don't go back. And I said, no, it's especially when you have kids, because I know they said, but now that you have kids, I said, now that we have kids, even more, they will come because they are coming for the kids. So yes.
Oh God. I think that's really great. Yeah, and people. I mean, obviously they don't understand. I mean, in the Western culture, the grandparents come and meet the kids and they go away. And then, of course, there was a podcast I was listening to today about how in America that the family meets only during Thanksgiving dinner, and during Thanksgiving dinner they meet and they fight over various things, right? So. So how did the L'Oreal shift happen? Now you've been you moved to L'Oreal, what, 5 years ago?
No, 9 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So
So
how did that happen? Uh, did they again headhunt you and said, look, we want the girl uh, who's
not
working on L'Oreal, on Dove, and
not quite. I think with L'Oreal, they did it the way L'Oreal does, and I think it's a great beauty company. But what a lot of people don't know is how it's really built on relationships and connections and people. It's in some ways it's not the processes that drive it, but the people and the connections. And I think I saw that in the interview because, again, it was it's an interesting story because I was going to have my first child, so Abir, I was pregnant, and I got a call saying that, oh, there is a role from a consultant. And I said, but I'm in London, and in fact, I want to go back to Bombay. With a kid, I'm looking at the right time because I want to be back with my family. So Paris is beautiful for the weekends, but I can't live there. And then it was about 6 months where, okay, let's meet for coffee, and it's very much a relationship based kind of company. So I met over coffee once in London. Then I sort of did a couple of video conferences because I was on my maternity leave. And then I was in India with my son, during my maternity leave. And I got a call saying, oh, by the way, the country head of India, L'Oreal, Jacques Chal, who was the country head at that time, they said he's going to be moving back home to Paris and he's going to be the boss of this role we were looking at, someone for. So why don't you go say hello to him? And I met him. And I think at the end of the 6, 8 months, I had really felt such a connection with everyone I had met that I said, I like these people so much. Let's give it a try for 6 months. We were young, with a child, we could have moved. And I think for me, it was that anyway, we are going to move back to India. So let's do 6 months in Paris. It's a beautiful city. And then, of course, we'll move back. I mean, of course, Paris can't be for the long term. And I think that's how I came here. Again, it was a decision taken with the heart. I mean, I don't know what I was thinking because it was a new country, new company, new language, new city, new baby. Everything was new. But I think it was the fact that I felt in the interactions with them that, they would all ask me, including the senior, people that, so what is it about Paris? How can we help from a family point of view? And I said, they're not recruiting Raka Sinha, the innovation director. They're recruiting me as a full person. And this was a very interesting approach. And I said, let's go give it a try. And it's been 9 years in Paris. So yeah.
So how was the cultural adjustment into Paris? Have you had to learn French? And I know, I think some years ago, if you were in Paris and you asked someone, which is the way to the Champs-Élysées, and the Parisian is probably very likely to say, oh, oui, oui, and they'll walk off, right?
Well, so on the transition, first of all, on L'Oreal, I think I have seen the change in 9 years. You're absolutely right. 9 years back, this was really, it was meetings were in French. I've seen there was a real will to change even 9 years back, which was also when I came, there was this, real push to say, okay, there is one person who doesn't speak French. So this is our excuse to do meetings in English. So that had started probably even before me. But now the L'Oreal I see is a completely different place. So, on the COMEX now, there are two Indians on the executive committee. So, which is again a first. So you have two Indians there. So in that sense, yes. But of course, it wasn't like moving to, Unilever in London, which was very different because, of all the reasons we know. So yes, I took a while, but I picked up French because I think, again, it's not so much the work pressure, but what I always say about Paris and France is that if you want to enjoy it, you have to adapt the French way of life, the French food, the French like rhythm of life, the French language, the culture. Otherwise, because it's not as international as London, and again, you will be not making the most of what this country has to offer unless you live really like the locals do. So here is where I find a big difference between London and Paris. That in London you could get any food, any group of nationalities. Here, if you're not willing to really take on the way it's done here, you're not going to make the most of it. So I learned French. I also happen to love French food. I love I think our holidays in the country have been some of the most exciting ones. So in that sense, like I said, I came here for 6 months. There's a reason I've been here. After 9 years, I'm still here.
So, we've talked about your career. I want you to talk about some mistakes, failures, which you had in your career and how you managed to get over them.
Ambi, I would say that I think when the move from Bombay to London happened, I remember that, when you come from India, where you worked in Marico, you worked in Hindustan Lever, you worked in sort of, these Citibank, Ulka, where you worked with some of the top talent. And then whether it's your team, with you, whether it's you, what's driving you is give me more responsibility, give me a better give me a promotion, give me more money, and I will do whatever it takes. That's how we were all brought up. I think when you move, you realize, when I moved to London, equally here, that there are many different drivers driving people. It's not as homogeneous as, and maybe the things have changed in India now, but in the 2000, in the big companies in India, everyone had a very homogeneous set of drivers. And I think I failed to read that sometimes when I moved to London, where I was like, okay, but then we will work through the weekend, we will work through the night, and this needs to be done. But hey, no, some of the really good people, but their drivers were very different. So I think it's about really understanding the heterogeneity of people, not just in the things that you would expect, but also more deep down in their drivers, which can be very different from the India that we are used to in the corporate world.
So you learned your lesson.
Yes, I did. I don't know about well, but yes, it's been a lesson, yes.
So going back to your career, can you name a few? I mean, you did talk of a few people, but some mentors you had who played a role in helping you settle down, help you take. I mean, you spoke very nicely about some of the things you did at Marico, but in Unilever, in L'Oreal, some mentors who kind of help you overcome problems.
So, at a very early age, and someone who's kind of been there with me at really the start, right from my school days to when I first mentioned the word advertising and my parents didn't know what that meant, was someone you may know, Mr. Roger Pereira. He's a very dear friend of the family. So he was always kind of, dad and he used to work very closely. So I've spent many days informally hanging around in his office, which was the world of PR, brand consultancy that it opened me to. So, that was sort of very early on. And I've often, whether it was Ulka, he was one of the big ones saying, it's a great place. That's where you must do your summer training, of all the different, more glamorous options that I was looking at. So he's been a key person in my sort of life from a family support point of view. And then I would say, I think I've been very lucky with many of the bosses I've had. Whether it was Deepali Nair, my first boss, again in Marico, it was bosses, but equally all the sort of other marketing heads for somebody coming from the outside. Jacques Chal, who I mentioned, who I think if it wasn't for him, I don't know if a shock of this new company, new city would have been as smooth as, somebody who also had worked in India. So he understood me much better than, someone else would have. And he kind of really helped me, adapt to this way of life from where he was coming, which was India. So I think I've been very lucky with bosses. And I think what's worked is that even after I stopped working with them, I've really kept in touch with them, not just when I need advice from a mentor, but, hey, this is what's happening. This is what is happening on my personal front. Little sort of wishes on special occasions, more like a one-on-one call rather than a random forward. So it's in that way, they know me and they know my sort of personal life. And therefore, when I need that advice and I call them, they're able to sort of guide me knowing the whole history. So I think it's a lot of my bosses who are more, friends, people I catch up with for coffee now or a lunch off and on, or, more extended sort of times, but who are now more friends and mentors rather than ex-bosses.
So we are in the last bit of our conversation, Raka. So, I want to know a few quirks if you have. One is, what is your favorite holiday destination and why?
Ambi, I love traveling. With all the time that I have and all the money that I have, I think we put into travel. With me earlier, it was me. Now it's with the kids. We travel at every occasion I get. That's the beauty of Paris. We have plenty of holidays, so we can travel a lot more than I used to. So I mean, it would be hard. I think what I always say is that wherever you go, if you live like the locals do, you will love it. But if I had to pick two, maybe there are many more, but if I had to pick two, I would say Tokyo is one of my favorite cities, and I would love to explore more of Japan. I've only done Tokyo just because it's like nothing I have ever seen in my life. When I went there, you're almost pinching yourself saying, can a place like this exist? Whether it's and from Bombay, you're used to being overwhelmed with senses, but Tokyo is another level. So to me, and I love all things Japanese, again, for some of the reasons we mentioned, that whether it's the culture, whether it's the history, the people, the food, I love everything Japanese. So I would say Tokyo is one. And then I would say the country I live in, France, because again, sometimes for lack of time, because of COVID, when we couldn't travel anywhere else, I would say, okay, let's do something in France. And every time we've gone, we've said, my God, I mean, this country has so much to offer. It's a bit like India, and I must admit, I haven't seen enough of India. And that's something I want to correct with the kids. But here you say, okay, let's just go here because we can't leave the country. And you say, wow, how soon can we come back here again? So I would say France, and not just Paris, really France, because there's so much more to France than Paris.
I agree with you on Japan, and I think we had the good fortune of going there during the cherry blossom season, and
Oh, wow.
it was really awesome. And of course, France is a beautiful country. You got of course, the seaside resorts, which give you one experience, and then you drive to the wine country. That's a different experience. So great. So what now? Going to, let's say, favorite movies, OTT series, or books, or music. Something you want to tell us about? Something uniquely Raka.
Sorry?
Something uniquely Raka.
So I must say that movies, series, etc., I will stay out because in the busy life, I have deprioritized this. I don't watch that much, but books I read a lot. Um, so again, if I had to say, sort of, given we were talking about Japan, one of my authors that I find very fascinating is Murakami. And I like most of his stuff just because it's so fantastical, and yet I feel like I'm living his life while I'm reading his books. So it's I mean, that's one of my favorite authors. But equally, I think I'm actually reading a book that, I mean, I won't say is my favorite book, but I love the genre. I'm reading Becoming Michelle Obama, and I think there is something about women, and sort of writing about their personal lives, which again you see one side of it. There was also Lean In by Sheryl Sandberg, which was a bit, it's about women, and it's so important that they come out and talk about some of the struggles that they've been through, because it's true that, again, and all of us have struggles, but I think sometimes one fails to understand all the sort of complexities of a woman in the workplace after she has kids, where a single mom, whatever. So I think that's the kind of books that kind of really open your mind up, and I wish more people would read books like that.
So Raka, we are waiting for you to write your book. Coming to last, I think a lot of young people are watching our show, and a lot of people have gone through COVID, lockdown. So you kind of seen 2 years of your career gone into a freeze. And like you said, a lot of youngsters are very keen on saying, when is my next promotion? When is my next increment? When is my next posting? So for 2 years, it's been, you've been kind of put on freeze. So what advice would you like to give them?
Ambi, I would say that very often when you see successful people from the outside, you see a career graph that goes like this. It's like a linear straight line that you see. What you really have to understand is that behind all these linear straight lines, there is a lot of ups and downs for everyone, I would say. And I think what sets people who are successful apart from the others is that when you're on a down, what have you done with that time? What have you done with yourself? Have you really used that time to learn new skills, expand your network, build your network? Or have you just sort of, given, we were talking about Japan, one of my authors that I find very fascinating is Murakami. And I think there is something about women, and it's so important that they come out and talk about some of the struggles that they've been through, because it's true that, again, and all of us have struggles, but I think sometimes one fails to understand all the sort of complexities of a woman in the workplace after she has kids, where be more agile, do things differently, taken lessons in what brought you down, um, while still holding on to your confidence and your self-belief. Because I think that's, the other thing, that when you're down, it's so easy to start questioning everything you're doing and your beliefs. So it's really important that you hold on to that and use that time, because then there will be an up. It's how you manage the down which will determine how up you go next. But the ups and downs, and yes, it's been incredibly hard for people starting out during COVID. But again, see it as a down and see it as what you do in this time, because there is going to be an up, like every career has, its ups and downs.
So thank you. Uh, Thank you, Raka, for taking the time out to talk to us. I think I've known you as a student and then later as a colleague in FC Bulka, and I'm really delighted the way your career is. Of course, you didn't spend too many years in FC Bulka, and that's a regret which we have. But, I think even then we were okay. If someone joins and spends 3-4 years with, and we had that funny feeling, right? We used to call all of you kids, right? Our kids are good enough for Citibank to hire. Our kids are good enough for Marico to hire. So we are doing something good, right? So we're very proud of people like you who left us, but then went on to build a great career. And I think your journey has been superb. I mean, from advertising to marketing with Marico, and then to Unilever London, and then now at L'Oreal Paris for what 9 years. And thanks for sharing, taking time out to talk to us, tell us all about your career, adjusting to new companies, and the nuances which you said. I hope the viewers got it, like how a company can actually, if you're good enough, a company can actually chase you for 9 months before you get hired. Raka, once again, on behalf of everyone here from the brand, ET Brand Equity team, Be Positive, thank you very much for joining us and sparing your valuable time and your insights. And on behalf of all of us, thank you. And this is your host, Ambi Parameswaran, signing off on yet another great episode on Be Positive Show on etbrandequity.com. So thank you. Thank you, Raka.
Thank you very much.